In the among the myriad technical difficulties, the things that we do to get these podcasts to you, Darren,
Oh
like
yeah.
he's like he was under the hood of his laptop. He was trying to adjust the kerosene level. Mine, I don't know what in the world's going on. But listen, we're so dedicated to you, the Southside Sox reader and Sox Populi listener, that we are, there's just nothing going to stop us. And while I was under the hood of my own technology over here adjusting the kerosene and oil levels, I got a little wardrobe change in. And of course, what would you expect? Of course Darren Black is going to go to the Kannapolis hat, because it's the Kannapolis Cannonballers 2023 preview. We have reached the end of the line of the previews, Darren. This is it. This is Low-A until whatever 5 months from now, when we do this all again, just reviewing the season. This is our last in this stretch of 4 straight. Tonight is opening night for Birmingham and Winston-Salem and Kannapolis. It's old hat for Charlotte. They've been playing like 30, 35 games already now, so they're well into the swing of things. But all the jitters tonight for the other three affiliates as they get started. And of course, Darren will be providing a lot of our nightly coverage in addition to our weekly wrap-ups, our monthly wrap-ups, podcasts, wardrobe changes, kerosene level adjustments, and everything. He is a man of many talents, and he's here to carry this podcast because I really don't know much to talk about when it comes to Kannapolis. So I'll stick with what I know, the couple notes that I've made. So let's start appropriately enough, not with someone not in the organization, Darren, but let's start with something that's got me now terrified. I had seen that Noah Schultz is going to have a little staggered start to the season, just like Colson Montgomery. Because of course these guys are, golden pick. I read your preview, which it's his right arm.
Yeah, so I think we found out about that from James Spigen's piece with Chris Getz, and Getz hasn't pay. No way he's gonna get or no way he was gonna finish the season. So might as well start late.
Yeah.
Kind of take it a while or take it slow to begin with, and let him pitch into what would be September for the first time in his life.
Right.
So just kind of let him get used to that fact, and then ramp up next year. But yeah, he not getting innings in competitive baseball till June. He could get maybe a start or two in the ACL, Arizona Complex League, but the majority it seemed like was going to be in the Kannapolis. So that's why he's here and not for that preview. And I don't know, what month is it? April. Two
Oh,
or three
believe
more
me, it's
months
all
until
running
that
together
is.
too. Okay, well then let me bring this up to you then, Darren. You calmed me, thank you. But now I'm terrified in a different way, and I'm terrified because I somehow forgot, even though while you were off, like doing whatever you were doing last year, I think I wrote the first round pick profile on him, so I should know this, but I should remember this. I'm terrified of his height. He is super tall, and that doesn't mean he's going to be Randy Johnson, because he could also be Alec Hansen. But that the countenance of this guy, I mean, as you say, projectable, because who knows? I mean, who knows? First of all, he's a high schooler.
Yeah.
That's always a who knows. And then he's a high schooler who hasn't even had the opportunity to pitch as much as maybe even a normal high schooler might have. So, I mean, this is really, really projectable. But boy, if you got to be projectable, you might as well like be able to jump center too. So give us a little read on what you see in this guy and what maybe some of the strengths are right off the bat.
Yeah, so I mean the thing that got him drafted in the first round is a slider. That's basically where the Randy Johnson's comparisons come in, obviously being really tall.
Yeah.
But a hard thrower and with a really sweeping, really biting slider. Both things, well, all three things, tall, fast fastball, and really good slider, are all things Randy Johnson had. I don't really like putting them in the same sentence. I know just when you talk in the draft, you're like, oh, this guy can compare to X, Y, and Z, and
Right.
they're all Hall of Famers in the first round, basically. We'll get to Peyton Pallette, and he was compared to Walker Bueller. So, always got to be compared to the very best
Right.
when you're drafted right away, and no one knows what you're going to end up like. But yeah, and he also has a pretty good two-seamer. that he apparently learned while with the White Sox after they drafted him, and it seems like that's worked out well in the backfields after he was drafted into this spring as well. And then, as we've talked before, not just with um, any they usually have to learn to change up, and that's something that he has to learn to use as well. But he's we see guys with two pitches doing really, really well. They normally have a slider and they're doing it really, really well in the majors. But he's, a long way away from that. And I mean, he's not Randy Johnson. He's not Chris Sale. He's not any of these really, really, really good guys. He's a raw, really tall. He's got some nice qualities, kind of a pitcher. And it's going to take a long time for him to finally see some time.
He's not Alec Hansen either. It could turn out to be
Well,
Randy
yeah.
Johnson, but we just
I
don't
mean,
know. We just don't know.
his injury was hopefully just right now. I know Alec
Yeah.
Hansen's big kind of fall was after his injury,
Yeah.
and he just totally lost command.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe that's why they're taking it much more slowly here with him.
Yeah.
I know the Sox really haven't had great luck with high school pitchers lately.
Yeah.
We've talked about all of them up until this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, projectable. Hopefully he's good. He's not going to throw a ton this year. 2024 will probably be the
Okay.
oh, this guy's really
Yeah.
moving kind of a year for him.
Dear Sox Pop listeners, Southside Sox readers, that we're going to explore the full studio space of the Kannapolis preview because I just don't know too many guys to ask about. So I'm going to go off the board and throw a question at Darren here because we hear this a lot that a guy's drafted and he has to learn a changeup. Now I've got a guess that picks sort of on wild card. Schultz being a guy who's just like a bit of a question mark, even though a very, very, very tall one. Well, we're going to get to the pronunciation soon enough, but Peyton Pallette, who had like first round pedigree, but had injury. I could be getting my guys mixed up, had injury. So that's maybe why they got him in the second round. But he's a guy that really is like, it really is almost a 1A first rounder and seems very clear is in position, if not only because he doesn't have any forearm issue, to really move faster than Schultz because I mean he's more ready made and he's a guy who can really click into that sort of first round pedigree, as soon as like his first couple starts this year.
Yeah, that's pretty much what he was going to be before he had Tommy John surgery. He was doing really, really well in 2021, missed all of 2022. So another guy who's not going to see a ton of time this year, coming off of a missed season. But as we talked about before, when we were joking about how these guys are compared to the very best, his comp was Walker Buehler because he's a smaller pitcher. Again, that's all height, and he also just throws harder than what a shorter pitcher normally would. So hopefully, I'm not really sure what kind of an innings limit he's going to have. I would hope that this is basically kind of going to be kind of a 6-7 man staff basically throughout the year until people start moving up and down. Once the 2020, what year is it, 2023 draft class gets flowing through the system. Normally the big kind of, oh, you're being promoted kind of in the lower minors, it's high A to double A, which is the big step. Not just because double A is kind of where you discover yourself as an actual major leaguer in the future, but it's also just for the White Sox organization, you're going from North Carolina to Alabama. So maybe he gets time in late in the year with Winston-Salem because it is just still in North Carolina, similar kind of level there. But I think once we're getting to this point with A ball, we talked about like Vera in the -1, but there's a lot of just projectability here, and there's not a ton of innings to kind of see where these guys end up. So it's kind of just a learning process this year for these guys, and then we'll see if they can really take the next step next year. And that's kind of where we're at in the lower levels of the Sox right now. A lot of guys that just haven't, or coming off of injury, or just haven't put in enough innings in their recent college or professional life. So they gotta they just gotta stay healthy. That's kind of the theme down here. At least on the pitching side. On the hitting side, there's not. We'll get to it later, but they really went all in on the
Yeah.
pitching side
Yeah.
for the last couple
So
drafts.
it promises an exciting second half of the show. Okay, to tell you how stressful it is to ramp up to the opening of minor league season, which is tonight, and then of course slash opening week for the White Sox, and of course the doleful drubbing that was dealt on Monday by the San Francisco Giants. Darren Black doesn't even remember what year it is, and believe me, I'm no better. It's a 2020. I think it's 2023. Okay, anyhow, that concludes the actual players I want to make sure to ask about. So it promises to be a very spicy, interesting, and I dare say maybe even esoteric second half of this podcast. Hang with us for a minute, and we'll be back. And I might not even talk. I might just gesticulate and let what happens in 1 minute. White Sox fans, it is Sox Pop on the Farm, number 41. This is a Kannapolis Cannonballers preview. They begin play tonight along with the Birmingham Barons and the Winston-Salem Dash. See, if I can't look at your hat and know what the teams are, I don't even know what our teams are, Darren.
Nope.
But I got the Kannapolis part down, so good. Okay, before we get to players, the offense, or whatever, I already established that I'm clueless about Kannapolis, and there may be good reason I read a Darren Black preview of a season or review of a season, I get depressed. Now it probably is more often than not, but when I read your preview, I got sort of depressed, Darren. And I think you alluded to it before the break. This is a very weird team, and maybe Low-A is always weird, but it seems like every single player is hurt, or they're like a little old, or it's like, well, what it's like, okay, we've got a speedster at shortstop, but I know he's got contact issues. I understand this is the time, this is the season, this is the level to start establishing yourself as a real prospect or not. And you see like the Benjamin Bailey's, oh gosh, RIP Benjamin, he's already been released from the White Sox system, for goodness sake. But I mean, this is, I mean, every level's make or break, but this is an interesting time, especially DSL guys, but even the guys we're talking about on this roster, this is make or break. There's a guy who's, I think, spent his third year with Kannapolis. I mean, this is a weird roster, and I know there's going to be an influx of guys when the draft comes or what, but am I right to be like, blah, what is this? Who do I even want to talk about? I mean, tell me I'm wrong, and then shoot off like 13 great guys to talk about before we finish this. But the Kannapolis roster is sort of a bummer. And I would say even I think last year wasn't, because we had all the prime guys, and then we had some guys, maybe even the Baileys are like, hey, who knows? A year later, it's like, what is this?
Yeah, well, we can kind of look at it two ways. The first way, and more, directly significant to Kannapolis, is they really just went all in pitching in the draft.
Sure.
And we know that they don't really spend in the international market that often, and when they do, it's usually guys like Oscar Colas
to play right field for the team.
Yeah, who will start with the dash and then go in the majors because they're a bit older,
Right.
or they're going to be your typical younger, like 16, 17, 18 guys that are starting in the DSL, and now they're going to be in the ACL. That's, the way to look at it, that the pitching is heavy, because if you look at the pitching, there are a lot of interesting guys. Obviously, the best pitcher that they have in the system is here, and maybe the third best with Pallette. And then, more interesting guys. And then a lot of the relievers that they took are like Drew McDaniel, Billy Seidel, Mark McLaughlin, Shane Murphy, just kind of guys that you're like, oh, okay, they did well in college for whatever they're worth, and they'll probably move quickly because they're all college guys. And we'll see if they have some relievers here. We'll see if there's a McKinley Moore here who makes the majors in 3 years, something like that.
Oh man, you're rubbing it in. Yeah. Right.
And then from the opposite of that, they used a lot of their draft picks to in last year's draft for older college guys with no eligibility left. They were all kind of position players, and that they would save that money to pay for the pitchers that we just mentioned. The other side of that is the hitters actually did really well in the lower minors last year. Wilson Montgomery did really, really well. Brian Ramos did really, really well. Wilfred Veras did really well. Wes Kath was fine. Not anything special, but
Mhm.
he's not deservedly back in Kannapolis. He showed enough that he gets the kind of promotion. Kind of guys like that. Luis Maeses showed that he actually
Yeah.
isn't as bad as he was in 2021
Mhm.
and prior to that. And I'm sure I'm forgetting some guys that someone will be like, "Oh, you forgot so and so." But that's kind of where we're at. It's going to be a lot of the draft picks this year. Jordan Sprinkle is the best one,
Mhm.
but he is the best one because he's an actual shortstop. He's not kind of like Colson Montgomery or Jose Rodriguez, where we're like, okay, let's see how they get better at being shortstop. They're really good hitters. Let's see if they can
Yeah.
get better at that, or
Yeah.
if they need to move. Jordan Sprinkle is, oh, he can play
Right.
shortstop,
Right.
but can he can
Can
he
he
hit?
hit? Right.
So,
It's never both.
yeah, yeah, it is. Well, we'll see,
Yeah, we'll see.
but it is never both to
Yeah,
start off with.
sure.
Um, but and then after that, it's kind of Drake Logan, Brooks Baldwin, guys that did get
Mhm.
um, close to the bonus pool that they were allotted. And then after that, it maybe Tim Elko. He, was had a
Mhm.
great College World Series run,
Yep.
but like a lot of power guys that come from college that also have a lot of strikeout problems. Once you come and play, the best of the best from your crew that you're going against in college, you kind of get
Yeah.
exposed.
Yeah.
And we've seen that throughout. Your TCU mate, Evan Scoug, kind of has run into some trouble there, though he did play well last year.
That's
But that's
triple A
kind of
catcher Evan Scoug to you, buddy.
yeah, that's kind of how that rolls for guys like him. Though he could easily be in with the dash too, because he's I think 24, 25.
Yeah.
So yeah, the hitting pool isn't that fun. I think it will be more fun later in the year or even next year. I could see Lloyd Alchapelli starting out in Kannapolis too. It's just usually going from the DSL, you usually just go to the ACL. And so I'm not, projecting that he actually goes. It would make sense age-wise,
Challenge him,
but
Sox. Challenge
yeah,
him.
yeah, I mean, we'll see, but
Yeah.
I assume he'll start in the ACL if he does,
All
and if
right.
he does really well there,
Sure.
then we'll see. But
Sure.
a lot of those guys from the DSL are too young; they're going to go to the ACL. The best one, Ryan Burrows, too young. He can't.
Yeah. Sure.
He needs to go to Arizona
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
still be a teenager. So
Yeah.
don't put too much
Right.
on his
That's a
shoulders.
lot. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Full
far.
season ball.
So
Yeah.
just start him out. Um, in a more controlled environment.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it ends up shaking out. But yeah, unlike previous years where it's like, oh, okay, Kannapolis is maybe that's where all the good guys are.
Mhm.
They're now moving up through the system,
Right.
and there just wasn't a ton on the hitting side to
Yeah.
kind of back them up.
Yeah.
That's usually how it goes with the Sox. There's always something that's
Mm.
out of whack. Last year, it was at the upper levels of the minors, it was pitching. This year, lower levels, it's hitting
Mm.
that they don't have a ton of. So
All right.
I'm sure they'll address that in the draft. They
Uh,
continually don't really address that in the international market. So maybe one of those two will, fix
right.
itself.
Happen.
But
Right. Okay. I
yeah,
feel a little better. Thank you, Darren. I feel a little better. Yeah. You can't be great at every level every year. Oh, wait. No, the Rays are every level every year. Okay. Anyhow. Okay. I do have a couple more questions, but I think it's worth pointing out we really could call the farm podcast. We could just call it the Evan Scoug podcast. We don't have to call it on the farm. We could call it Evan Scoug podcast because I mean, listen, he's our bridge. He's why we're best friends, Darren. I mean, he went to he went to both of our schools. He went to
yeah,
our high school. He went to one of our colleges. It's like, I mean, he's the linchpin of this podcast. So come on, make that majors push, Scout. Let's do it. Come on.
yeah, he's right there.
Yeah, right on the brink. Okay, I want to ask you about relievers, but first I want to ask you. Let's essay question a little bit here. The White Sox, for now at least a couple years, if not the entirety of time we've been working together, Darren, have had organizationally, record-wise, and I know who cares about records? It doesn't matter. You don't win a prize for, well, you do win a prize, but no major league prize for winning your division or winning in the play or making the playoffs, as if the White Sox are going to make a playoffs with an affiliate anytime soon. I know it doesn't get you anything, but it's got to be some sort of litmus test for your organization. So we know that the White Sox organization, by and large, is bad. It's not just because they bring up guys quickly and they've got like 16 draft picks in the majors. I mean, hey, that shows fairly well, but the record shows awfully. Now, my question to you is clearly the White Sox want to, despite the fact you pointed out that they don't spend any international money, and they have this weird thing now where they're going to go like all in pitching, and now you're saying, well, now maybe next year they'll go all in hitting. Oh, correct. It's like, well, hold on, there's another way you can do this where it's pitchers and hitters. But anyhow, okay, sorry, White Sox. Sometimes we got to laugh at you. All right, but this is a bad system, right? The record-wise, bad system. They don't win. Whether that's important or not, okay, they don't win. And whether the goal is to be the race system that wins like every division in every league, they win divisions that they don't even have a team. They're not even fielding a team in. They still win that division too. So, I mean, okay, you don't have to be that either. But given that this is like a bad record organization, do you think it's possible for the White Sox to correct that to get to be at least like a 50-500 organization? And if so, how long do you think making a concerted effort to try to improve your system, if that's what they're doing? I don't know that's what they're doing, honestly. But if they are, how long do you think that would typically take for it to correct? Is that like a 5-year thing where maybe 5 years from now, not that we'll necessarily be talking, as much as I might miss you, and as much as I definitely think that, you know, you have no choice but to keep doing these 5 years from now, Darren. But I mean, could we get to that point? I mean, it's probably not going to correct itself in a year. What's your thoughts there? And does it matter? Is this just a stupid thing to be talking about?
No, I mean, I don't really put a ton of stock into affiliate standings. I know since I've been here, I think there's been two teams that made the playoffs. Maybe even just no, yeah, there were two. One
Great
Kannapolis,
Falls,
one
one
with the
Kannapolis, one
dash.
Great Falls.
Oh yes, Great Falls. I forgot they existed. See,
See,
I guess that was the idea. But I don't, yeah, again, I don't put a ton of stock
okay.
in it. They're usually like, to take another podcast talking point, Jared Kelly, like he was working on a breaking pitch and using it a lot more than, if you were really making a playoff push than he would have. Um, and especially if we're continuing on to the Kannapolis portion where they have a ton of guys coming off of injury that aren't going to pitch, um,
Okay.
full season's worth of innings, maybe even not, 3/4 of the season's worth of innings. It's just they need just arms to continue that example to kind of just finish out the games. So I'm not sure how that happens. I know where each affiliate is doing pretty well, but at this point, if there's a guy that's doing well enough, they're moving them quickly to get to the majors at this point. Even like Davis Martin's probably the better example. He moved up from AA, right up to the majors to go and help. Lenyn Sosa did the same thing.
Bizarre organization. They seem to be smart or cheap or smart and cheap, whatever. But I mean, other organizations then somehow then do it differently because I mean, somebody's got to win these games. I mean, you're saying, okay, the White Sox are emphasizing the fast lane, sort of like the Ken Williams thinking of like, okay, we need to win now, just win now, baby, get guys up. And to be fair, White Sox do have a good percentage of their draft picks on their major league roster. Certainly a year ago they did. But there are organizations that do a little bit differently, and they're more more slow track. They don't need the help at the majors. I mean, I guess the answer is yes, but it would be surprising that there'd be that big a difference in approaches. But I guess there is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, if we are continuing with the Rays, I mean, they just have like waves and waves of guys kind of at similar or at each kind of level, and a lot higher ceilings, and they obviously put a lot more money into player development. And same with the Dodgers. Like you will always see certain teams, right at the top, even if they're in their, winning window because of how they develop guys. And I'm not really sure, how far behind the Sox are from the tippy top of those guys. I know they're not, 2019, they have been talking about more and more ways of improving just player development in general. But that's basically where it comes down to. If you're not using every single tool to your advantage, you fall behind, and that seems like what happened for the Sox for a long, long time.
Like,
I'm not sure if they're catching up, because again, the high school pitchers they've taken, which is usually the guys that are going to be the best options long term, have not worked out still. So we'll see kind of how it goes. At this point, we all know their struggles in taking just bats first and then kind of trying to find their way onto the field.
yeah.
Jake Berger, Zach Collins, Kevin Sheets, those guys, all first, second round draft picks. And I don't know what they've been doing to deserve the injury bug they've gotten. A
Yeah.
lot of guys just kind of floundered in their top draft picks that just got hurt. Aforementioned Alec Hansen. If you guys remember Zach Birdie, he used to throw really hard, got hurt, didn't throw hard any longer, and was getting some major league time, but kind of floundered there. And then
Hey.
Carson Fulmer,
Yeah.
I don't know what happened with Carson Fulmer, but that's we'll see how this iteration of it goes. Because it does, they took back-to-back high school, like high projectability players, and Colson Montgomery has looked like the best prospect we've seen for
Mhm.
the Sox in a while,
Mhm.
since probably Moncada, or just in general.
Mhm.
Not sure about internal guys who he would be the best one, since internally there hasn't been a ton lately of pure they just drafted him, or I guess Luis Robert counts, but I think he's a little bit too old to be
Tim Anderson.
developed that much. But yeah, Timmy, yeah, probably Tim Anderson. That's the last guy.
Oh my God. I just want to stab myself in the eye. Okay, wait a minute. Okay. Hey, Ian Hamilton just he's a Yankee now. Okay. All right, White Sox. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Now you just said waves and waves, and I think, okay, but wait, the whites, why can't the White Sox have waves and waves? And then I thought, okay, Darren doesn't need to answer this for me. I'm really dumb, but here's how you can do waves. You don't waves and waves of talent. You don't trade away your international money for nothing. You offer you give qualifying offers when the situation presents itself to get an extra high draft pick. And I'm dumb, Darren. I'm dumb, and I know those two things. I don't have a front office behind me, and I knew those two things. I bet you if you whispered in my ear, not that you have to whisper in my ear, if you whispered in my ear, we'd have like 5 ways we could strategize to get waves and waves of talent. And yet, look at us. We're just doing the Evan Skaug on the farm podcast right now instead of sitting like fat cats in the suite class there on 35th and Shields. Oh, Darren, how did it all go wrong? Okay, Darren, I have one more question for you, and that is, you mentioned earlier in the first half or early in the second half here, some of the relievers, some of the relief arms, some guys you're not even certain are going to be starters or relievers, but I think there's a 4 or 5 that you mentioned in the preview. I'm curious to know maybe what the one guy that's really catching your eye, or the guy that you think might be able to move fastest, or you're most impressed by of that group, knowing that they all have that potential. Is there one guy that we might just want to put a little asterisk on?
Um, I mean, the out of so the group that was mentioned, it was Shane Murphy, Mark McLaughlin, Billy Seidel, Drew McDaniel. I think the guys that are kind of tweeners right now, Shane Murphy and Drew McDaniel, are probably the guys to watch out for.
Okay.
Again, it's not necessarily a bad thing to be labeled as a reliever at this point, but if a team is trying to see if you can actually be a starter, then that's you usually you're thinking a bit better about
Yeah,
them.
sure.
Sometimes it doesn't work out. Like Jason B, a guy we brought up previously. I've said he should just be a reliever for the longest time,
Yeah.
and they just were like, no,
Let me guess, Darren.
he
Cleveland's going to figure him out. Let me
yeah,
guess.
he hasn't played yet, so I don't know.
All right.
But yeah, so yeah, those two would be the guys that I would watch out for. And then we'll see after that. I'm not
Yeah.
sure who gets moved up first when Noah Schultz gets here, assuming everyone's healthy, which just may be a huge assumption. But Murphy and McDaniel are probably the two guys out of those kind of 4 higher paid 2022 draft picks to watch to see if they can move up quickly.
Yeah. Okay, we have to wrap this up quickly now. I'm already getting a bunch of notification dings of hate emails from the White Sox front office for what I just said. Somehow they're getting this broadcast live. I don't know how they're actually snooping in on that, but they already know how they were just dissed so badly because I dared suggest that at some point there should be waves and waves of talent in our organization, not just all the other ones. But sorry, but I got to get to answer those really quick, Darren. So I mean, we gotta wind this up. But tonight, opening night for the 3 affiliates that aren't named the Charlotte Knights, including the one that you are wearing on your head, Kannapolis Cannonballers, and that is the biggest question mark of our affiliates, and that will probably then mean that they're going to be some of the most fun storylines, or certainly the most entertaining story. So that's why we play the season. That's why we pay attention to the affiliates. That's why Darren Black pays attention to the affiliates so that he can help educate me on a weekly basis here on the Sox Pop on the Farm, or AKA the Evan Scoug Memorial Podcast, because he's just our best buddy and we walk the same high school halls as him. And well, listen, I'm going to try to beg Darren into doing as much Saturday coverage as possible, but I think we have to wait until Sundays, and I don't know if it's Tuesdays. He's doing his minor league update stuff. We're going to try and load him up. I mean, he's pack muled it pretty good. And then of course his weekly stuff, his monthly stuff, and as many of these podcasts as I can somehow cajole him into doing. We're hoping it'll be weekly, but we'll see. For now, we're going to take a little bit of break because we've done 1, 2, 3, 4 in a row, and we are previewing guys we've maybe even never seen play, or certainly I'm like, who is this guy? Can you pronounce his name for me, Darren? So thank you, Darren, for educating us on all these guys, 4 levels. Hey, we get to do a couple more mid-season-ish. We'll get to do a couple more because we got DSL talk and ACL talk. Maybe we'll smash into one like we sometimes do, or maybe we'll break it out. Who knows? If Lloyd El Chapelli, if my brother is not playing in Kannapolis, we're going to definitely do just an ACL because I'm going to have like 15 questions about Lloyd El. I mean, and you're going to have to be prepared to say, Brett, you're right to be on this guy because, oh my God, I just watched some footage and my jaw dropped. Anyhow, that's for like weeks from now. So I'll let you take a break. I'll let you take the hat off. I'll let you get back to your life. And I'll let you not deal with all our crazy kerosene laptop technical difficulties. We got to see Darren Black for these last 2 affiliate previews. Thank goodness. All is well. All is back to normal. And we'll be back weekish 10 days or so. I don't know, a week or so. Darren's going to have his player of the week soon enough, coming around the turn, maybe 10 days or so from now. So maybe that's the next time we will join you on a podcast. Thanks for joining us now. And I'm now going to stop this recording and see if my laptop will actually stop the recording. Let's find out together.